Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Tuesday, March 22nd Board of County Commissioner meeting. Is Pastor Elder Rodney Osborne? If you don't mind stepping up. Hi. Go ahead.
Our Father and our God, we come this morning, God, as grateful children. And God, we come to show our gratitude, and first and foremost, we want to tell you thank you for the gift of life and the portion of health and strength that you have afforded us on this day. And God, we thank you, God, for these leaders, God. And God, we ask that you bless them and you bless their families, God, and that you would give them the courage to stand for what's right and give them the wisdom, God, to make the decisions that's right for this great county of Brevard. And God, we pray for the citizens of this great county, that you would bless them from the least to the greatest, God. And oh God, we just want to tell you thank you right now. We pray blessings over this meeting, that it will be what you would have it to be, God. And finally, God, we pray for our troops, God, all across the land. And let us not forget those citizens in Ukraine, God. And God, we will continue to praise and bless your holy name. It is in the precious and most powerful name of Jesus the Christ that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. And that was Pastor Elder Rodney Osborne with Friendship Primitive Baptist Church. Thank you. And thank you for bringing your family. Beautiful family. All right, and with that, I'd like to call this meeting to order. And if you just stand and join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I have no minutes for approval, so we're moving on to resolutions. And first, we have Florida Surveyors and Mappers Week. Do we have somebody there to receive this resolution? Hi. Thank you. All right. Whereas surveying has been an essential element in the development of human environment since the beginning of recorded history, and its requirement in the planning and execution of nearly every form of construction, with its most familiar modern uses in the fields of transportation, building and construction, communications, mapping, and the definition of legal boundaries for land ownership. And whereas George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and other former presidents of the United States served their fellow colonists as surveyors. And whereas the surveying and mapping profession requires special education, training, the knowledge of mathematics, the related physical and applied sciences, and requirements of law for evidence. And whereas the continual advancements in instrumentation have required the surveyor and mapper not only to be able to understand and implement the methods of the past, but also to learn and to employ modern technology in finding solutions to meet the challenges of the future. And whereas the citizens of Brevard County recognize the valuable contributions of the surveying and mapping profession to history, development, and quality of life in Florida and the United States of America, and make important decisions based on knowledge and expertise of licensed surveyors and mappers. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, in conjunction with National Surveyors Week, does hereby proclaim the week of March 20th through March 26, 2022 as Florida Surveyors and Mappers Week, and recognize the many contributions of the ongoing dedication of our present-day surveyors and mappers to the citizens of Brevard County, done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 22nd day of March 2022. Can I get a motion, please? Motion by Commissioner Pritchett, second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Do you want to say a few words?
Sure. I'm Mike Sweeney. I'm the county surveyor. I'd like to say thank you with regards to all the surveyors in the county. And I'd like to introduce you to the senior surveying and mapping supervisors, Sam Vanderwalker, Gil Crook, and Tony Vitale. Some of the best surveyors I've worked with a long time. At this time, I also like to give a call out to my staff who's up working in the offices and out in the swamps and everything else. Amber Holly, Larry Lytle, Rick Henning, Mark Cornell, Garrett Gordon, Brian Dolan, Brian Joel, Jared Alwich, and David Labastida. I think I got everybody, I hope. So, now one other thing I like to say, while I got an audience here, we have an opening for a survey, Field Tech 1, beginning position here. So if anybody's out there that loves to work out in the field, fair and foul, and likes math and maps, please send us your application. We'd love to have you come join our family.
Thank you.
All right.
Great job.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I've had a very trying weekend this week. I want to address the passing of Roger Gadgetano. I don't know how many of you knew him, but he was well known in the community, particularly the Republican Party community. He passed fairly suddenly on Sunday. He was very instrumental in both of my elections. If you needed something done, people went to Roger. If I know in 2014, he came up to me and said, boy, if you need anything, let me know. And the same was true in 2018. If I needed somebody to answer a phone or drive a car or stuff an envelope, he was always there. He was just a terrific person, so he's going to be missed.
Take your time.
And then, of course, on Friday,
Got this deep breath.
we lost Pat Woodard. So I don't have to tell anybody how much he'll be missed. But I do have to tell a good story. Of course, I was in constant contact with his wife, and every day we talk. And he went into hospice, I think it was last Tuesday or Wednesday. And he was sedated, and every morning she would tell me, well, I think today might be the day, or maybe tomorrow. Well, Friday morning, she said, Commissioner, I think today's the day, or maybe tomorrow. But she said, you know, I can see some different signs. He's resting peacefully. So I started to text some people to tell them that it was close. And I don't think I even got to my third text. And she called me and she said, Commissioner, he just passed. And she said, I'm so happy because he's not in pain anymore. But she said, you know, hospice has been telling me all week that I should tell him that it's okay to go because we're ready. And she said, you know what I did, Commissioner? I whispered in his ear. And she lowered her voice and she whispered into the phone. And she said, Pat, you know, my sister's coming tomorrow, the one you hate from Hawaii. And you know you don't want to be here when she shows up. And she said, you know what? It wasn't 5 minutes later and he stopped breathing. So, anyway, two great gentlemen, and they're gone. Thank you.
Thank you. I know how much he meant to you, and we all have our Pat Woodard stories. I had the pleasure of serving with him on Palm Bay City Council in 2007, and we had a few battles, but we always respected one another, and he's definitely a big personality and a good person, and he's going to be missed for sure. And I know how much he valued you and your friendship, so.
Madam Chair, I'd also like to throw in that I don't remember any county business without Pat Woodward being involved, and he served all the way up till he couldn't, and he's just a great person, and he's done so much for the county. And he used to keep Commissioner Smith in line, too, before the meetings, and
That was a full-time job.
yeah, but what a wonderful person, and we're, as a county, we're really going to miss his not being here.
And I'll just share, my husband and I called him, after he was given his diagnosis, and I don't think I've ever heard the man talk more rapidly than he spoke with us that night. And he said, it's changed my whole perspective, and he trusted in God, and he just said, I have a positive attitude going forward no matter what happens, and I just want to tell the people I love them, and he's an amazing person, and I'll never forget that phone call when we called him and how happy he was to hear from us and just share with us his thoughts, and he definitely touched us all.
And he was upbeat right up until the very end. And if you spoke to him even in the last days that he was lucid, he would tell you with a big smile on his face how happy he was and how blessed he was, and that he was happy to go home to Jesus. So he was ready.
Thank you. All right. Well, on that note, something a little more upbeat. We're going to do another proclamation for Water Conservation Month. Do you want to read it? You want me to read it?
No, I got it. Okay, this proclamation is about water. How's that for a subject? Changing the subject. Whereas water is a basic and essential need of every living creature, and whereas the state of Florida, water management districts, and the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners are working together to increase awareness about the importance of water conservation. And whereas Brevard County and the state of Florida has designated April, typically a dry month here in Florida, when water demands are most acute. Florida's Water Conservation Month to educate citizens about how they help save Florida's precious water resources, and whereas the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners has always encouraged and supported water conservation through various educational programs and special events. And whereas every business, industry, school, and citizen can make a difference when it comes to conserving water. Whereas every business, industry, school, and citizen can help by saving water and thus promote a healthy economy and community. And whereas Brevard County, Florida is calling upon each citizen and business to help protect our precious resource by practicing water-saving measures and becoming more aware of the need to save water. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Brevard County Board of County Commissioners does hereby proclaim the month of April 2022 as Water Conservation Month, done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 22nd day of March 2022. Madam Chair, I move to approve this proclamation.
Motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Thank you to the entire commission. And thank you in particular to Commissioner Pritchett for agreeing to be the sponsor for this proclamation. I'll keep this brief. These proclamations are a great way to kind of highlight the important, vital issue of water conservation across not just our region, but the entire state. And this is just one tool we have sort of in the toolbox to emphasize how important water conservation is. And I just want to remind everybody that even the smallest step that you take as an individual at home or at work or out recreating, one step can make a difference. And if everybody does it, we can start turning that ship around, so to speak. But again, thank you to the commission for agreeing to tee up this proclamation, and that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner
Thank you.
Pritchett.
Would you introduce yourself to everybody? I got to meet you in my office, but I think everybody would probably like to know who you are.
Huge failure on my part, yes. Thank you for pointing that out. My name is Jim Cannon. I'm with St. Johns River Water Management District. I am the intergovernmental coordinator. Took over a couple of months ago. Some of you worked with my predecessor, Abby. But I work out of the Palm Bay office, and my role really is to act as that sort of primary liaison between you and the district. So if you have any questions, concerns, or you need any information, please feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to consent. I have a card for F1. Does anybody want anything else pulled from consent? Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to vote no without comment on F13.
Commissioner Lober?
I'd like to vote no without comment on F10 and F11.
If there are no others, I'll move to pass the consent.
Okay, with the removal of F1 and then with the no votes for Commissioner Tobias and Commissioner Lober?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a motion to pass consent with the removal of, except for F1, and with, I'll make sure I get this right, Commissioner Tobias voting no on F17 and Commissioner Lober voting no on F10 and F11?
No, Madam Chair.
Oh, 13,
13.
I apologize. Commissioner Tobias voting no on 13. Can't read my own writing. All right, Commissioner Smith, I have a motion by Commissioner Smith, second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, F1? You want to introduce F1?
Good morning, Commissioners. This is a grant from the state of Florida to provide 50/50 matching funds for connecting 100 homes from to sewer and abandoning their septic systems. The local match is already approved in the Save Our Indian River Lagoon project plan. The agenda item would authorize the chair to execute the grant contract, authorize the county manager to execute any future amendments, and approve related budget change requests.
Ms. Sullivan?
Good morning, Sandra Sullivan. It's great to get all this money. This is nearly $1 million that'll go to septic to sewer. At the last Save the Lagoon meeting, for the monies that we've already got for this, is a pitiful number of actual implementations that have occurred. There was some discussion about it, and apparently there has been only one postcard gone out to homeowners. So we have to do a better job if we're going to get the money, of spending the money. There was also discussion where before it was focused on that, I think the number was 10% of septic systems are creating, the bulk of the nutrient loading in the lagoon from septic, and those were the highest priority. So now they're looking at, let's just replace all septic in the county. But the lagoon was the focus, and prioritizing those septic systems that have the most impact. If we're not doing a good job of replacing those, we need to reassess that and put that back on track. Thank you.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion by Commissioner Pritchett.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Smith. Ms. Barker, can you talk a little bit about the efforts to convert people from septic to this county system?
Yes, and it's not just to the county system, it's also to the municipal wastewater treatment plants and central sewer systems across the county. So we use the state-approved model to estimate the loading from each of the over 53,000 septic tanks that are in the Indian River Lagoon watershed in Brevard to identify those highest priority sites. And we sent postcards to those highest priority sites. We got fairly low participation, and so in this year's project plan that was approved by the board in February, there was an increase in the cost share that would be available. So we're trying to reach either those same highest priority sites or the next highest priority sites. And the cost share that would be available to those second priority sites would be based on how much load reduction is actually achieved. So whether it's one house loading 40 pounds a year or two houses loading 20,000 pounds each, the same benefit would reach the Indian River Lagoon.
Okay. All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. I have no public comment cards. So moving on to public hearings, item H1.
Good morning, Commissioners. H1 is a petition to vacate a public drainage easement at 275 Camino Place, Woodland Estates. It's in District 3, considering to vacate part of a public drainage easement, and for the chair to sign the resolution approving the vacating. The petitioner is requesting 5 feet of a 20-foot wide public drainage easement for the construction of a pool, and there are no issues.
All right. Commissioner Tobias, do you have an issue with this? It's your district.
No concerns, Madam Chair.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Smith, second, all right. Motion by Commissioner Tobias, second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item I1. Commissioner Lober?
I have a couple changes as to what I put on the agenda, having spoken with staff and some of the constitutional offices. With respect to the agenda item, which was put up a little while back, as to the number 2, where it talks about staff education and/or training, I wanted to have another option in there, but still coordinated through HR, to allow for that pool of funding, the $60,000 identified there, to be used to pay for BCFR employees and BCSO employees to go to the respective academies, provided that they commit to work with either BCFR or BCSO for a period of time. I'll work with HR and BCFR and BCSO, pardon me, to get the specifics in terms of all the requirements, but I wanted to have just an understanding in the motion itself that that pool of funds could be used for that as well. There may be, if it's lawful, some level of local preference just to have a higher retention level in terms of the number of months. Like I said, I'll work with them. And then lastly, the other change is the last bullet point on the first page, which runs 2 lines under the second page. I'm just going to strike that altogether. Just that one bullet point. Everything else will remain as it is. So again, the only 2 changes pertain to that $60,000 pool identified in number 2, and then the very final bullet point on the first page, which runs 2 lines under the second page. Everything else is as it is. So I'll go ahead and move to approve with those 2 changes.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Yes, Commissioner Lober, the second bullet point down on the other one, I would be more comfortable if it's the chair that signs the contracts.
That's fine.
Okay,
You want me to, how about we just strike that bullet point then?
okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, then the motion reflects that as well.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, this seems to contemplate 2 things. I'd ask, for a little more clarification on that. This has the remaining spending of the CARES Act money in total, whatever, $481,000, and then it has. I'm sorry, I'm trying to follow what was struck. An audit.
That's out.
So the entire. This is just the. So it's the one at the bottom all the way through all the bullet points at the
No.
on the second page.
The very bottom bullet point on the first page, which goes 2 lines under the second page, and then the one that Commissioner Pritchett identified as well, which is the second to last bullet point on the following page.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
that's the following review by County Attorney's Office. That one.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So it's just 2 bullet points being struck. That one, and then the one that we identified earlier, the longer one that rides from the bottom of the first page into the second page.
Okay. Madam Chair.
Yes.
So the one above, the one that was just struck reads, staff shall be authorized to execute any necessary BCRs to effectuate the above.
Yes.
The above now refers to.
Everything above that wasn't stricken.
Okay, so it's just the
$81,000 roughly.
$81,000, okay,
It's not a precise number, but that's a rough number.
okay. Okay, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Okay, got it. And then help me, how does that impact the last bullet point? The motion is keeping with BCC 43 as approved by the BOCC on
It renders
September-
that one irrelevant.
Okay, so that one can be,
If you want it stricken, you can, but
I'm
it
just
makes
trying-
makes no difference. It doesn't authorize anything or preclude anything.
yeah, I was wondering what the change would be. Okay,
Yeah, if you want to take it out, I really don't care because it has no impact with the other, the first one that I mentioned striking, that's the one that goes from the bottom of 1 into 2. That last bullet point really doesn't serve to do anything. But
Okay.
if you want it out, I don't have a preference either way.
okay. Thank you.
All right, so we're clear. You're not requesting the audit, correct?
I'm just not even addressing it in this. It's not that I am or am not requesting it. This action has nothing to do with that.
Okay, but this was part of this item, so.
Right, but it's been stricken.
Okay. I just wanted it clear, that's all.
Yep.
All right. The board have any other input? All right, did you make a motion?
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Lober to approve this item, I guess minus the request for audit, so that would be the last several bullet points.
So let me make the motion just so it's clear. I don't want there to be any ambiguity. The motion's to approve this as is, with the only changes being with expanding the pool that's identified under number 2, the $60,000 pool to allow for BCFR and BCSO academy costs for folks that sign up with either such agency. And like I said, I'll work with HR and the respective agency to determine what requirements are put in place for that. I'm striking the final bullet on the first page, which runs 2 lines onto the second page, beginning with whereas the version. And then I'm also striking, as Commissioner Pritchett requested, the second to last bullet on the last page, which starts with following review by. Otherwise, it's unchanged.
And the last 2 bullets, correct? After we've
If you
discussed.
want, Commissioner Tobias? I really don't care. Do you want me to take that one out, too?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I don't, since the line, the bullet point above has been struck, I think, just for clarity.
Okay.
It may be simpler just to say, whereas the version of this agenda item presented on March 8th, everything from that bullet point down, we don't need.
We do need the BCR.
Sorry, okay, so we do need, yes, that is correct, to effectuate the changes that could come. So with the exception of staff shall be authorized to execute any.
Okay, so for clarity's sake, just to reiterate the motion one last time,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, because we're kind of going over and over this. The changes that were referenced with respect to number 2, the $60,000 pool, that's contemplated as being changed, as discussed a couple times at this point. And then everything beginning with whereas the version of this agenda item presented through the end of the agenda item, with the exception of the line addressing necessary BCRs, all of the stuff that follows that. So beginning with whereas the version of this agenda item, moving forward again, with the exception of the bullet point addressing BCRs, all the following is stricken for purposes of the motion. Are we on the same page?
I think that's clear. Did the clerk understand? Okay.
So we're striking the $60,000.
No, we're striking this
Got it.
and these.
What are we changing here?
That's, we're adding, he added the extra funds to be used toward this to include BCFR and BCSO.
We got it. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes. Commissioner Tobias?
I think that this was a suggestion that came out of my office a few weeks ago. It puts me in a kind of a tough position because I asked you to bring this forward. You did. I had an issue with, even though I don't think there was any malintent there, with some of the mailing going out there. So
It's out.
you took it out. It looks like this is going to be largely, if not exclusively, filtered directly through the county offices. So it looks like you took quite a bit of effort, and I was going one direction before everything was struck from this, but I'm having trouble finding issues.
Stop looking.
At that. So I want to hear from the rest of the board, but I'm certainly inclined to go from a no to a yes on this right now.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, I think this is a good outline now, Commissioner Lober. Let me ask you a question, though, since we struck that one part.
Sure.
With funds that are left now, because I know you ran under budget before, are we able to designate those to public safety now, of anything that's left over after this? Because I don't think it's a large amount, but it would be nice
No.
to get this tied up.
No, if you look at the second to last bullet point in the original agenda item as it appears on Legistar, from
Okay.
the first page where it says in
Infrastructure.
consultation with
Gotcha.
county budget, it all goes to infrastructure.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. I should have read that better.
It's okay.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, there's no further discussion.
Well, I have one question.
Commissioner
I just want
Smith?
to make sure. that So this depletes all funds that you have from CARES, correct?
Yes, and again, that's the last item that I mentioned with respect to anything that's left over. If there is anything, it's going to go to infrastructure.
Okay.
Because the problem is, without looking at a particular minute, I don't know exactly how much has been used out of some of the programs. If Ian, for instance, had another indigent burial, that could change the equation here by $700. And I'm just throwing out a number there, but there could be other things that have been ongoing where, unless I check instantaneously, I don't know the precise numbers. But this is very close.
Okay.
Okay, my only question is, as far as the education and training, who's setting the criteria for that?
I'll work with staff to set them.
Okay, I prefer if staff set the criteria myself.
Again,
or if-
I'll work with staff. If that means you're a no vote, then be a no vote.
I'm not trying to be a no vote, I'm trying to understand what you're asking for, because there's a significant amount of money there, and I want to make sure that it goes toward, a policy we already have in place that covers staff training. And if you want to add additional, I want to have that clarified.
What would you like to know specifically?
I mean, are we paying for certifications that are part of someone's job description, or are we paying for education that's related to their job? I mean, it doesn't specify. And
I
know-
apologize, but I thought it was extremely clear in the agenda item where it says education and/or training for skills usable within department.
Okay. But there was education and skills that we paid for out of our office budgets that, to me, I wouldn't have agreed on paying had that come back to the board. So I'd like to see that criteria myself before, or I'd like staff to develop the criteria.
What have you seen that would be compliant with this policy that you have an issue with?
I have an issue with you setting the criteria for the education and training. I prefer staff to manage that.
Again, I'm planning on working with them. If you need to vote no, then go ahead and vote no.
Okay, Mr. Lober. All right. Any further discussion? Commissioner Pritchett? You have anything,
Commissioner Lober, I know what you're saying. I know what Commissioner Zonka is saying. Can we maybe pull this part out and come back after you come back with what you're specifying? I think it just make it easier.
Well, let me see how the other votes line up before I do that, because frankly, I just want to get this done. This has come back twice now.
Well, you've done a lot of really good work. You really have. And you've gotten everything very, very clear. So I just think, maybe if there's something you can think about for the next few minutes of how to clarify it.
I don't know what it is that's unclear that you'd like me to clarify. I mean, I've already mentioned, I believe, that there were a couple of concerns. Number one,
Yeah.
that they actually enlist with the department if we go in that direction as far as paying academy costs. I mentioned local preference if it's lawful, but these are things I have to work out with staff to determine how many of them I'm actually able to implement. And I don't want the money that otherwise would have gone to this from other programs now to disappear and go to something different and have this replace it. This is intended to supplement
Gotcha.
what's already in place.
Yeah, I understand
Not
that.
to replace it so that we free money up to
So
be
we
used for
move
something
money
that I
around.
wouldn't necessarily approve of.
So you want this in addition to what the funds are already
Right,
there?
and
You don't-
that's what I'm looking
Yeah.
for.
Okay, I understand that. Maybe if we put that into that, sir, that these are additional funds.
I'm
that-
fine adding that. I mean, obviously, the motion contemplates that because I put it out there at this point, but
It's just the only thing that you don't have in here that's totally clear, and you're usually really good with that. So, Madam Chair, I'm going to ask we take like a 5-minute break, and maybe Commissioner Lober can reframe that so that we can just.
if y'all want.
That's up to Commissioner Lober.
If you want, and I'll try to add a little more detail. I don't know if it's going to cover what you're looking for or not, but I'll put some stuff in there.
All right, we'll take 5.
Okay.
Who wants to take it? Commissioner Lober?
All right, so I drafted something up here real quick, and I had Abby take a look at it, and she's good with it as well, in the sense that we both think that this covers what y'all were looking for. So the motion is as it was before. However, the section that starts with the number 2 will read as follows. Staff education and/or training for skills usable within department, in parens, coordinated through human resources. This shall not be used to reimburse any elected official, department director, or assistant department director. This part I added. It shall not be available to any commission office employee. No individual staff member may receive more than $3,000 in reimbursement from this funding source. Then there's another paragraph that says, this pool of funding may also be used to supplement any existing funding to cover in-state tuition costs for those BCSO and/or BCFR recruits at Eastern Florida State College. There may be a commitment requirement imposed by either BCFR and/or BCSO with respect to recipients of this funding. Absent a prohibition on local preference, this shall be restricted to residents of Brevard County and/or a physically adjacent county. As with staff, this too shall be limited to a maximum reimbursement of $3,000 per first responder. You good with that?
I'm good with that.
That's the motion.
All right.
It's an awful lot of wording to say something that simple.
You ain't kidding.
That's a blessing.
Yeah.
I've told you that before. You have a way with words.
Is that good or is that bad?
Ask them.
I don't want to.
When we're hungry.
Yeah.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Lober.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Tobias. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
And I'll send that to the clerk with the language I just read.
All right. Item J1.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. This is this is legislative intent and permission to advertise an amendment to Section 74 of the Brevard County Code pertaining to restrictions for sexual offenders and sexual predators. This is just legislative intent. We will bring back a proposed draft ordinance, and this is in relation to providing for an exemption for county government buildings for the limited purposes of conducting county businesses and accessing government services.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
I told you so.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item J2.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. This is also legislative intent and permission to advertise a proposed amendments to Section 106.1. This is safe use of public streets. This is for a pedestrian safety ordinance. This is just legislative intent, permission to advertise. The proposed ordinance will make it prohibit either individuals from making physical contact with any vehicle in any lane of traffic stopped at a traffic control device or at an intersection, or exchanging any physical item with an operator or occupant of a vehicle within any lane of traffic stopped at a traffic control device or an intersection, and essentially defines roadways, mediums, obstruction of traffic, pedestrians, and the like, in order to fully inform the public as to prohibited conduct, which would be specifically stopping, standing, or sitting in that area and conducting this behavior with motor vehicles. There are penalties to this provision, but once again, this is legislative intent and permission to advertise. We would bring back the actual ordinance for your consideration.
All right, I have 3 cards. Hannah DeRocher. And after Hannah, Nathan Slusher. Hi.
Very nervous, never done this.
Don't be nervous.
My name is Hannah DeRocher. I'm 6 months pregnant. I've been homeless on and off throughout in Melbourne area, living in hotels when the mutual aid group could help me. I have gone to Daily Bread, I've gone to Salvation Army, I've gone all throughout your county trying to find some kind of help. I work at nights now, thankful to the mutual aid group that has helped me so I could stay clean, I could get fed. I did panhandle, but in the safest manner, by standing on the side of the street and letting them decide if they wanted to help me. If the light was green, you don't go near them. It's obvious. I have been hassled by cops, told out of sight, out of mind. Pretty much told to go to a tent and go in the woods. So then they can later kick you out and give you a trespass. They actually directed me in which way they wanted me to go. I flipped the other way though. Other than being hassled like that by the cops, they've left me alone on the side of the road because I have not attempted to come up to vehicles and ask for money. I hold my sign. I let them know what's going on in my life. I did make some bad decisions, but it's not like people would think. My car broke down in Kentucky. I ended up down here, and I'm stuck. I now have 2 jobs. I work DoorDash because of a coworker that I had made friends with at Popeyes that I work at. And that, plus my wife having a job and him having a job, we're still struggling. There's no low-income housing. I'm on disability as well. I still could not find help. So to me, the panhandling was the only way I could find the clothes I needed to get my job going, the food I needed to keep me going, motel room here and there just to get washed up, every 2 weeks. And everybody yelling at you, making you feel horrible, not being able to use a restroom because they know you're homeless, telling you to get off their property. It's a horrible situation, especially being pregnant, but even being just a human alone and being treated this way because you couldn't make it right off the bat. I started from nothing. I'm living in a hotel, having to pay $606 a week, making $634 every other week. Unless we can get some low-income housing or some more funds for people who are actually trying to help themselves, you guys will see panhandling, and that's just to keep them alive half the time, and that's barely working. So I understand the safety portion, but if you're doing it safely, I don't feel there should be hard time or anything given to you when you're just trying to survive on what you're given. Thank you.
Commissioner Lumber?
Just real brief. I think I turned myself off there. Just real briefly on that, I met with some folks yesterday out at a church in Merritt Island who were bringing up the whole low-income housing topic, and I don't want to derail this whole thing on a low-income housing discussion, but I did just want to bring you all on board that I spoke with Ian Golden yesterday about a couple of thoughts or a couple of items that were discussed during that meeting that I had. One was with respect to impact fees and what we can do as far as encouraging developers to build more low-income housing. I believe, from my understanding, we already have a waiver for the transportation impact fees or a portion thereof. I don't know to what degree other impact fees may be lessened or waived to facilitate that. I have Ian looking into that now. I believe he's reaching out to TAD to do that. And then the other thought was we have a ton of vacant land that the county owns, and I know a lot of it is easily monetizable in the sense that we can auction it and make some money and also get it back on the tax rolls. But if we have land that's not necessarily tremendously valuable, where we really wouldn't realize a huge amount of money from auctioning it off, especially if the area is compatible or consistent with having some low-income housing, I think it's something to keep in mind. I can tell you, when I was a kid in Seminole County, some of the low-income housing was nicer than the stuff that was around it that wasn't low-income housing. And you would never know unless you did some sort of research that it was low-income housing. So I think there's this stigma that's associated with it, that it somehow ruins a community, and I don't believe that that's necessarily the case. I've seen that in an adjacent county here. So it's just something I would say, not with respect to this item, but since it was brought up in public comment with this item, we should just keep our minds open as far as what we can do to try to facilitate folks building these low-income housing projects, because frankly, the developers oftentimes don't want to do it because the margins aren't there. So whatever we can do within reason that's not cost prohibitive to facilitate that, I think it's a good idea for us to at least look at.
Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to kind of go along with what you were saying, I agree that I've seen some, and some of these developers have come into my office, and boy, this stuff looks good. And I've seen pictures of some of the low-income housing that they've designed, and it is nice. And when I hear stories like this young lady here, it's heart-wrenching. So I would like to see us do something, if it's possible, to help folks. This was in no way intended to punish anybody. It's strictly a safety issue. So it's a shame that there's collateral damage pursuing this, but I think in the light of trying to keep people safe, I think this is necessary.
Commissioner Pritchett?
I want to thank you for having the courage to come up and speak. I know that that's not very easy. As we are doing the advertising on this, I think we might need to, figure out, areas we're looking at, because there are some areas we have to do this with because they're dangerous. This isn't the intent of this to take away somebody's ability to get some charity. I know that you're working this, and you already know about things like Section 8 and First Housing. I know you already know these items, and I know they're tough to get into, so I know there's some things going on. What's interesting is we start talking about affordable housing, guys. The ones that are going in with affordable housing, they're still like $1,500 a month to rent them. So I don't know how to get a type of housing in to where it's really actually affordable for people who make $600 or $700 a week. So that's going to be the challenge. Commissioner Lober, you did have a good idea, and I think even sometimes maybe if we do a grant to the property and the builders come build it, we can work out something with them and maybe tax abatements with low-income housing. But this is definitely an issue, and I'm looking at it too. So you have my heart, and I do have you do. So I just pray you are able to find everything you need to support you and your children. So this is a big subject, guys, so I'm going to be in favor of advertising this, and maybe we can just kind of think if there's some things that have undue consequences in it. But I think the flavor of this ordinance is good, because we do have great safety issues as well. So,
All right, I'm going to listen to the rest of these cards first, if that's okay. Nathan Slusher, and after Nathan, Mary Poole, or Peel, I'm sorry.
Good morning, Nathan Slusher at 860 Allendale Street. Commissioner Pritchett actually just hit the point I wanted to come up here and speak on Section 106-203 of the Prohibited Acts. What I'm worried about is unintended consequences, because while I feel this was built for public safety around panhandling, if it was built to protect the 95 interchanges, which is where it can be very dangerous, and Transportation Planning Authority can come in here and show the statistics that we are having people hit on 95, and we prohibit on and off ramps, then that is definitely a safety thing. But the way this is written, it prohibits a lot more than just panhandling on 95. It prohibits the firefighters from doing charity events at the intersections in District 1. It prohibits the protesters who are out on US 1 handing out documents. It prohibits any kind of political advertising any year. It prohibits far more than just panhandling. So I do want to encourage you, before you advertise, to amend this so that it doesn't have unintended consequences. And if we need to protect 95 because that interchange is dangerous, then protect the 95 on and off ramps. I think that is completely understandable. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Marie Peel?
So, good morning. My name is Marie Peel. I'm here as the Vice Chairwoman of the Libertarian Party of Brevard County. When I read this on the agenda, I saw safety, I saw about the ramps for 95. I was disappointed when I read it further and read into the details, because I felt that that was misleading. Although there was statistics in there about safety, this was clearly about panhandling and addressed much more than 95, and even addressed sidewalks, not even necessarily directly where it was speaking to. But my main issue with this is that instead of working towards resolving the root causes of panhandling, which is clearly what this aims towards, it puts further burdens on Brevard residents, which whether that person has a home here or not, a place that they can call a home, they are a resident here. They are people here in Brevard County who need help. So instead of resolving root causes, which I've heard discussed here, but I'm talking about the actual wording of what is being proposed, it puts burdens and aggravates the situations, because it says giving up to a $500 fine or 6 months in jail. So you have someone who's in need, and they're put in a position to choose between, will I get my next meal? Will I be able to pay for whatever housing I'm in or get more food for my family? Or do I go ahead and, do I break the law to do this? Because either way, they're going to be in need. So if someone then has to turn around and have a $500 fine, which they're not going to have money to pay for most likely in the first place, or 6 months in jail, which will also mean that they wouldn't have been able to work or earn more money, it's aggravating the situation. So I request that this not be put up unless it's written in a way that helps with the root cause, instead of just putting burdens on people who are already in need. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I don't have any more cards. Commissioner Lober?
I had a question for Abby. Are we able to advertise this somewhat broadly so that we can factor in and adjust some of the concerns that were brought up today? Because what I'd like to do is at least take a look at it and see what we can adjust. But I'm just concerned that we don't advertise it so narrowly that we're not able to do that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we can address that as far as the advertisement is concerned.
Okay, I'll just throw out there, if we advertise it broadly, I'll support it today if you're counting votes. Anyone up here?
Commissioner Tobias?
We would just advertise a very
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first of all, I want to thank Commissioner Smith for bringing this forward. That's twice now you've come up with stuff that has, though I've been on the opposite side, have required me and my staff to do quite a bit of work, and I really appreciate that. I just want you to know when you do come up with something, and I'm sure you've got a lot in the wings, and I'm in support. I'll do just as much work to help you cross that line. I suspect you won't need it, but with that being said, I have a few, and when I say few, I mean quite a few issues with this that I'd like addressed, and maybe you can give some answers. And I understand this is just to publicize. However, you've shown your flexibility already on this, on some changes that have come forward, as you'll see. But I too believe this ordinance has nothing to do with public safety. It's exclusively about panhandling. And it's a shame that we're hiding that behind that because, as you, I'm sure, are well aware of, panhandling is protected under the First Amendment. I don't want to say this is a war on the poor, but we have homeless veterans out there. We have freedom of speech. And I thought Commissioner Lober would be very concerned with the Fourth Amendment, which, of course, adds search and seizure on here. But I have three primary areas of concern that I'd like to hear your opinion on, whether you were meant to go down that or maybe that's something you could address. And again, this is something I would have handled behind the scenes. But of course, with Sunshine, we don't have that luxury. That's why everything is so much smoother up in Tallahassee than what it is here. But they fall into three basic categories, just to give you a heads up: safety, cost, and unintended consequences. So let's start with safety. And you can tell a lot about an ordinance in the whereas clause, and when you mention something over and over and over and over again, it probably has nothing to do with that. But you use some statistics here that were cherry-picked. The Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization report, are you aware that there is a more recent report that shows that the number of accidents have actually decreased since the one that you put up?
No, but that doesn't surprise me because it's a fluctuating number.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I go back and forth?
Sure.
Yeah, it decreased by a large percentage, by more than 100% between the report that you had and the more updated report, the 2020 report.
No, I wasn't.
Okay. I'm sure you're probably aware that Melbourne City Council passed an ordinance and coincidentally struck panhandling, dealing with almost word for word, almost the same here. My question to you is, that took place about almost a year ago, June 8th, 2021. If this is truly about safety, I'm sure you've looked at the traffic accidents decreased or increased. I don't know the answer to this. That's why I'm asking you. But they have the same ordinance in Melbourne. What did you see? Was this effectual for decreasing the number of accidents?
Well, I don't know if that can be quantified, because the point is that,
Well, we quantify it in the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization. So we actually do quantify this on
Right, but
severity, injury, death.
but you're using such a small portion from June till now is what, 9 months? Something like that. So whatever number you would get, or numbers you would get out of a 9-month study, or numbers out of a 9-month study, I don't know that short of about 5 years, you can really get a handle on trends.
Oh, okay. God creates a baby in a year, in 9 months. I think we probably can get a little bit of whatever. But anyway, let me go on to the City Attorney of Melbourne. This was the City Manager's report, and it says, in 2019, again, this is dated June 8th, 2021, the City Attorney's Office provided a recommendation to the Melbourne Police Department that it stop enforcing the 2014 panhandling ordinance. Again, it's very coincidental. This all happens at the same time. I'm sure that's all it is, a coincidence. But here's the important part. Instead, rely upon and enforce existing state laws governing pedestrian traffic. So we do have state laws that govern safety. I'd be more than willing to go over those with you, but I'm sure you've probably looked at those prior to this. That's Florida, Florida Statute 316.2045 that deals with a person may not willingly obstruct free, convenient, normal use of public streets, highways, roads. There's a bunch of these. My question to you is, why do we need more when we already and we have an attorney, city attorney, saying that that's the way to go? Why do we actually need more? And have you even contemplated what ability law enforcement has to effectuate those state statutes that prohibit safe actions that are not safety in roadways?
Well, I have, and I conferred with our sheriff also, and the concern is that you have intersections that are busy, like Ellis Road, Wickham, and Pineda, among others, not just 95 exits and entrances, that are extremely heavily traveled. We already have a lot of accidents at these intersections, and there's a lot of them here in the county. And this isn't taking people's ability to panhandle away, if that's the word you want to use. They're out there, as this lady suggested, they're out there trying to supplement the income that they're already making. We want to make sure that they're safe and they're not running the risk of injury and/or our drivers. So these people can still go into parking lots like Walmart, they can go into parking lots like Publix, and they can ask for help there. They can pick the roads and corners that are less traveled. We're looking at main arteries here, and because people do move and people don't pay attention, and look at all the wrecks that we have at these busy intersections. And these drivers have a hard enough time just negotiating red lights and yellow lights and green lights. So that's the impetus here. We're trying to save lives.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Okay, for any people that don't have homes, I understand the intent of what Commissioner Smith just said, but please do not follow that. I have multiple state statutes here that deal with trespassing that is expressly prohibited.
Well, if they're on sidewalks, public sidewalks, and at the entrance of a...
I just want to make sure that we're not, that it's private property and they have the ability to maintain certain types of...
I'm not suggesting that anybody go on private property.
But on top of that, let me go with the second one here, because this is the one that really got to me, and that was cost.
Whatever, that's part of their job.
Okay, so I'm assuming that most of the folks, I mean, we had one here, that were panhandling, would be indigent and would need a public defender. Have you reached out to the public defender's office to find out the cost on taxpayers for the defense of this?
No.
Okay. What about the cost associated with the judicial process? We constantly hear that our judges are overworked. The clerk of the court has told us that they're having issues scheduling. Have you contemplated the judicial process?
Well, I understand your question, and I'm sure it's a valid question, but at the same time, I'm thinking that if you know that when you come to a stop sign and you realize that you're supposed to stop because that's what's required, you stop. And I'm sure the word will get out in the community that you're not supposed to stand on an intersection or an island in an intersection and panhandle, ask for money, or hand out political literature. It's not a safe thing to do. So I don't know that anybody would have an answer for that.
That's fine. Okay. For 2019-2020, it appears that it's an average of $66.48 to keep an inmate in prison. This would allow up for 60 days as it's a misdemeanor. That's roughly $3,900. When you add in other factors, you're looking at $4,000 or $5,000 very easily. Is this really the wisest use of taxpayer money to enforce this at that cost?
Well, again, my concern is safety, and if we can save one life, what is that worth?
But again,
and again,
but we've talked about, you haven't done, when I asked if there's a 9-month period in which your ordinance had gone into effect in Melbourne, and the response I got was I hadn't looked at it. If it truly was safety, wouldn't the response have been, yes, there's been a 31% decrease of, and I don't know what the answer is, I'm just making that up,
right,
of safety, but instead I get no. If it truly was safety, wouldn't we give Melbourne a little bit time to see if dealing with panhandlers, public safety was taken care of, and then try to craft an ordinance that did what?
Well, I didn't dive into it deeply, but I
Okay.
did talk to several people in Melbourne.
Perfect.
And they considered this to be a step forward in safety, yes.
Great. So you spoke, and you said you spoke with the sheriff, correct?
Yes.
Great. Did you speak with either the public defender or the state attorney, two other integral parts of this? Because if the sheriff arrests, right, the state attorney is the one, I believe, that is then required to, or not required, but at least it would be additional burden on both his office and that of the public defender. So neither of those?
No.
Okay. And finally, and it was mentioned up here, and I didn't get protests. That was one that I didn't get, but I did get some fun ones here, and I addressed them, and some of them were taken care of, apparently with an edit, so you're going to have to hang with me just a little bit, but I have some pictures up here. Dawn, if I could get those up here. Oh, yeah, so here's the first one. Firefighters, I never thought I'd see me on the same side of firefighters on this one, but Section 106-203, this would prohibit this activity taking place, or at least make it a misdemeanor. By the way, I looked up and spoke with some folks, and by the way, this is local up here. Muscular dystrophy, as well as St. Baldrick's. I was surprised because I know that was something near and dear to your heart. Is it your intent to make this a misdemeanor punishable by jail time and a fine?
If it saves a life, yes.
Are you aware of any firefighters that have been killed handing out a boot?
No.
Okay, so great. Or handing over the boot. Okay, another picture. This is a good one here. Now, this is an interesting one because you'll see a robot is handing candy to a child. This was by the Brevard County Sheriff's Office. This was probably on a non-arterial road. The change we had would fix this, which is good because I don't know whether we would arrest either the robot or the police officer that was controlling the robot, but you fixed that, so robots are safe now.
Well, and this young child doesn't look like he or she is in a seatbelt either, so how safe is that?
Oh, or a booster seat. So, and that's that Altman. So, good call. Bad parenting, bad robot. Okay, let's go with another one here. So, COVID relief efforts, donation, food supplies, testing. Are you aware during a pandemic, food was handed out in front of my office on Palm Bay Road? Is it your intent to make this activity a misdemeanor? Punishable by up to 60 days in jail and a $500 fine.
My intent is to save lives, period. So
Okay.
you can put all the pictures up
Oh,
here
I've
you
got-
want. The answer is going to always be the same. It comes down to safety. If you can guarantee me that
But
these folks are going to be safe and not be injured, and/or the drivers won't run into the back of somebody because
But you
somebody
have,
was
there is
stopping.
there is no evidence to safety. The next one, parades, and you took care of this, but I just wanted to point out how poorly the document was drafted. This is a parade in Melbourne, and before the changes that were just made, this activity right here would have been punishable by a $500 fine, 30
So I guess
days
you're
in
trying
jail.
to, you all this.
Now, there's more.
Well,
Can we put up another one?
Are you going to vote no?
I'm gonna, I wanted
That's
to
all we
hear.
really need to know. We're wasting a lot of people's time here, so.
No, by infringing on people's First Amendment rights
We're not
and
infringing on
creating a
anybody's
war
rights.
on poverty,
Well, that's your opinion, sir. You're entitled to it, so vote no.
it's not my opinion. I hated to do this, but I'm gonna, Proverbs 14:31. Whoever oppresses the poor shows contempt for their maker, but whoever is kind to the needy honors God. And you
Amen.
Amen. Do as I say, not as I do. Let's go on to the next one. Gosh. Here's another terrible one. During the pandemic,
Well, that looks safe.
during the pandemic, we had drive-by birthday parties to make sure that COVID wasn't transferred. Here's a picture of a drive-by birthday party.
And is that in a private
But here's the
driveway?
deal, your initial proposal, this would have been,
It's not in there now.
My point is, you can make it better. You're slow. Let me show you another one,
Well,
another
if you would-
nefarious
If
activity.
you would like to constructively help make it
I
better,
am.
would.
That's
I
why
would-
it appears as though I spent more time on this than you did at this point.
Perhaps.
Okay, let's get another one here. Certain churches provide I don't want to say goodie bags, that's terrible. Provides necessary packages for folks that include crazy things like body warmers and food and all that good nonsense, and soaps. This would become a misdemeanor the way it's written if this was handed out, or was that the intent?
Of course not.
Okay. Finally, and you fixed this one because this was a very, very important one to me is
I'm sure it was.
yeah, ice cream trucks. The way it was written, ice cream trucks would have been, so you fixed that, so thank you for the ice cream ones. But let me tell you what this did, and I have a concern, and I think many constituents would have concerns on this. The panhandlers are generally on larger streets. Obviously, the traffic flow is greater in those areas, and I guess there's more opportunity. You got rid of all public streets and just made it the more well-traveled ones. Commissioner Smith, are you concerned that this will move the panhandling from the larger public roads to the smaller residential streets?
Well, if they want to, again, this purpose is for safety, and if they find that they can't do this on busy intersections anymore, then I'm sure that they'll filter out to other intersections, if it's lucrative enough. If it's successful, they'll do it. If it's not, they won't.
Okay. Madam,
Free enterprise.
great. And this is all about safety. Benjamin,
Well, if you-
let
go
me
ahead,
just end
finish.
here. You can sum this up. Benjamin Franklin once said, "Those who give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." And here's where I had to be, and I just won $1 in busting out the Bible verse. As you can see, I had to read it. I was not memorize any of that stuff, but it is amazing the sheer volume of quotes dealing with poverty there is in the Bible. It's incredible. And basically, the short of it is be nice to poor people. I don't know. I don't know that this does it. But here's where I have another issue on this. It's hypocrisy. As a candidate for office, I ask people for money more times than I would like to admit. Call up, and the bad thing is I ask for hundreds or even thousands, capped at $1,000 at a time. If they have a wife or a husband, I can ask for $2,000. If they have kids, I can ask for even more. There's no way in the world I can look at an individual up here who's 6 months pregnant, trying hard, that's asking for a couple bucks for a shower and a meal, that it's okay for me to ask for thousands, and it's not okay for that individual to ask for a couple bucks. She's an adult. She can make a decision. It sounds like doing this very in a safety-conscious manner, and without any evidence or without updated evidence that this will actually work, it just doesn't seem like an equitable direction to go in. Again, I'd like to quote the Bible, but just be nice to poor people. And this one, I don't understand. I find we're extremely nice to rich people up here. I mean, we give Walmart millions of dollars. We give Blue Origin millions of dollars. Now we have a homeless person, a person without a home, I'm sorry. We're saying you can't go ask for a couple bucks. I just, if that's not hypocritical, I don't know what is. Again, thank you so much for bringing this up. I love delving deep into this, and we could go over
I can tell.
We could go into the legal arguments of because this has been dealt with on the Supreme Court, but I'm not an attorney, and I wasn't going to waste your time on anything. I thought just, be nice to poor people, or not be nice to poor people. Just don't be mean to poor people. Yeah, you don't have to give them a buck, but at least give them the opportunity. So, ma'am, thanks for taking time out to be here. You put a face on this that, we don't see, but thankfully, apparently we'll see less of now because you won't have the opportunity to do that. Your government at work hard for you. So if that wasn't apparent, I'm going to be a no on this, no matter how it's amended.
Okay, well,
Well,
let
I gotta-
me just, go ahead.
I have
Go ahead.
Commissioner Lober.
So first, Commissioner Tobias, please don't let me in the Blue Origin crowd. I wasn't around then, and frankly, I didn't agree with that particular decision. I want to step back for a moment and talk about an item we had earlier in the agenda because it relates to this, that J1 sex offender ordinance. Literally everyone up here did what was politically convenient at the time, and the taxpayers are the ones who are going to be abused at this point, as we're certainly going to end up paying the other side's legal costs. And the ordinance that was adopted that was so politically fun is going to be rendered null anyway. So the bottom line is the board ought to be raked over the coals essentially for the vanity of pompousness in that decision. I don't want the board to make a similar decision with this, thinking that staying in a Holiday Inn Express qualifies them as legal experts. So a few of the items that Commissioner Tobias brought up, I think they're easy solutions to. And when I requested earlier that we look at advertising this particular item pretty broadly, it's so that we can go in and correct some of the concerns that have already been identified and some that may not have even been brought up at this point. So as far as jail is concerned, I don't want to stick anyone in jail over this. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Frankly, there's nothing that precludes us treating this as a civil citation where we say, okay, there's a fine, but to to waste the space in jail over someone that does something like this, it's just moronic. I mean, there's no nice way to say it. It's dumb. I'm just thinking it would be like in a comedy movie. Hey, what are you in here for? Oh, I stuck a guy in the neck with a knife and I twisted it. How about you? Oh, I'm in here because I was panhandling. Give me a break. Come on. I mean, it's ridiculous. So if you take out the possibility of jail and you just leave the fine element of it, in this state, there isn't an entitlement to counsel if there's no possibility of incarceration in a jail or in a prison. So there is no public defender cost if you take out the jail element, which shouldn't be there anyway. You can carve out what's necessary to allow those things that you don't want to find as collateral damage, as long as you don't start getting into the point where you're regulating what type of speech is acceptable and what's not. To me, you really ought to focus on the specific locations and identifying where the real dangers are. So we heard about highway on-ramps and off-ramps. Obviously, I don't care what the speed limit is, they're horrible places to have anything going on as far as people interacting with folks in cars, whether they're drivers or passengers or what have you. If you're talking about roads with high speed limits, let's say it's over 50 miles an hour, or even at 50 miles an hour, maybe that's another area. If there are areas where historically we have information, whether it's from TPO or from Road and Bridge or otherwise, where there have been a bunch of collisions either with other cars or with pedestrians. When I used to live in D4 some years back, I can tell you, I remember when a golf cart got hit by a car, it was real ugly. And it was on a road where the speed limit wasn't really that high, but I would still say that was a dangerous intersection. It was one of those where you saw near misses all the time. So I think, you take out the jail component. I think you carve out, specifically which areas and which categories of areas you want it to apply to. And if there's some little road where it's a 25 or 30 mile an hour speed limit, or heck, a 15 mile an hour speed limit, I don't know that the safety concern exists there to the same extent it exists elsewhere. I do think this is a good idea in the sense that you have to balance, the safety of folks with also not infringing on what people ought to be entitled to do. But it's not a situation where it's either everywhere or nowhere. I think you can have something of a dimmer switch where you say, okay, look, this is really where we need to put this in place. These are the dangerous intersections where we're having problems. And if it's not one of these areas and it doesn't meet a particular criteria that we specify in whatever it is that this ends up becoming before we adopt it, then it's fine. It is what it is. And I don't care if it's a fireman with a boot or someone that's panhandling or St. Baldrick's or whatever. It doesn't make a difference to me. I just don't want people to get hit by cars. I think that's generally a recipe for bad results. And lastly, because I have to pick on Commissioner Tabaya a little bit because he picked on me earlier, as far as the Franklin quote, I would suggest that folks look up, there's an NPR article from actually about 7 years ago that addressed how that's almost universally misquoted all the time, and really it was more of a pro-taxation quote than anything else. So I just thought I'd throw that out there as well.
Commissioner Pritchett?
I just want to throw out that's 2 meetings in a row that Commissioner Loper and Commissioner Tabaya brought up Scripture. So I'm going to vote them both to church with me Sunday morning. I'm going to send you guys an address. I'm going to save you a place right next to me.
Are you really going to do it?
We won't talk about anything with government.
I might take you up on it. Be careful.
Okay, I'm going to send it to you, and I can't wait to see you. Commissioner Tabaya, there's a lot of really attractive young women there, so you might show up anyways.
There you go. Look, he's getting red.
I'll bring my wife.
I would love to see Rebecca there, too. Seriously, I'm going to send that to you. I can't wait to see you. I think we just explored a lot of things that I don't believe were necessarily the intent of the ordinance. So, Commissioner Lober, I think you had a good idea a while ago to advertise it broadly, because here's the thing, and I know what Commissioner Smith is doing. You guys know there's some places that can be really dangerous, and Ms. Hannah, I'm sure you're smart enough not to stay in a place where you're going to get hit with a car, especially if I'm the one driving. Like, there's this place at Walmart by our house, Mr. Slusher, where there's all 4. People will stand there. I cringe every time because you don't know how many times it's just not good. It's not a good mixture with me driving at these eight lanes going across to be standing there doing that. So just, fair warning. But I think this is something we need to look at because, this constitutionally, you want people to be able to get blessed. But there's such high rates of speeds that we have to deal with as well, especially with population picking up. So I think we need to figure out how to keep people safe and then still not take away that. I do want to throw this out. Ms. Hannah, if we found you a good job, you would be happy, wouldn't you? So I know that. So here the thing is we continue with job creation and find ways to keep companies moving in, to keep the economy going. And because I've been there before, I haven't had enough, and I'd rather make money, take care of my family than be at the mercy of other people. So I mean, I totally get it. So anytime we can just create these jobs and get people employed, feeling good about yourself and being able to pay your bills, that's always a good route. So I'm throwing that out with the space companies we've had come in, because that has greatly helped our economy. Because if you didn't live through the crash that we went through a few years ago, it is such a blessing having new organizations come in with job creation. So I wanted to throw that out. But I think if we do a broad advertisement, Commissioner Lober, I think that was a very good idea. And then we can work on this, because there are some areas that we might need to look at for higher accidents. And, you know, it's kind of unfair to go back and use some data with others, because during COVID, nobody left their houses, so accidents went down greatly. So I think this might be some ideas of what to look at, maybe the rate of speeds on roads like they were discussed, and those places where you can't really pay a lot of attention when you're trying to increase speed to go places. So I think this is a good idea to consider of some things we can do without hurting people that need to have the ability to have charity.
Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sometimes when you sit up here and you hear people talking, you would love to just interrupt. But, you know, it's our job to listen, because through listening, we learn stuff. And I've learned quite a few things, some of which I won't mention. But I want to point out to Commissioner Tobias that Jesus spoke more about money in the Bible than he did about prayer. And I think, I can't remember the exact number, but I think he talked about money about 500 or 600 times, and he talked about prayer about 200 or 300 times. So money is important that people talk about. Ms. Abby, I'm going to turn to you, because we have an update that covers most of this. Would you talk about that, please?
We did have an update to the ordinance, so just to make sure we're all working off the same one, it was uploaded to the agenda. But specifically, we were addressing the arterial and collector streets, which are your more high-volume streets as defined. You're looking at those streets from the vantage point of volume of traffic, the trip length, as well as the operating speeds. So we were looking at the more higher speeds, specifically like I-95 and the like, as well as we put in additional exceptions. Specifically, we were accepting out anyone who had a special event permit, which would impact parades, and also addressing the areas that are exclusively residential districts to, remove those from this ordinance specifically. So those were some concepts. Obviously, I've been taking notes through this discussion. This is just legislative intent, permission to advertise. I can incorporate a lot of those comments into the ordinance. One thing about the studies that were used, and I think Commissioner Pritchett hit on this exactly, is that more recent studies are going to reflect that the decrease in traffic that we saw during COVID. So we were using we thought more relevant, I think, studies at that point that showed what happened before COVID. We were seeing a lot of accidents at the intersections. Well, we also saw a decrease, I understand, in traffic during COVID. So we were just trying to make the studies relevant to what we think will happen now that COVID is over and we see more people and more volume of traffic. So those studies were also being used just to show the intent was for safe streets and trying to prohibit the impacts that we have individuals entering into the traffic areas. Not to prohibit the behavior. I mean, if you want to do a food drive or the like, you can take that to the church or whatever the nonprofit entity may have a facility they can do those drives. I mean, that was not the intent. It was really the traffic areas. But I have listened and I have taken notes, and I can confer and make those changes, and we will advertise broadly, and that way, when it comes back, you will most likely see the changes.
Very good. And I like Commissioner Lober's suggestion with regard to jail time, too. I think that needs to be taken out of there. So with that in mind, I'd like to make a motion to pass this and go forward with the legislative intent.
I have a motion by Commissioner Smith.
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay. So motion passes 3-2. Well, I mean, everybody pretty much said everything. I mean, you guys get tired of hearing me talk anyway.
No, that's not true.
All right. Moving on to item J3, Commissioner Lober. I know it says placeholder, and I didn't see anything on the agenda, but I
Yeah,
imagine.
I think there was some discussion actually in the recent past, at least with the advisory board, and I just wanted to wait to see what it was that came out of that. But it's my understanding, and I'll punt, I guess maybe to Mr. Denninghoff would be the best, to see if there's an update as far as the status of the 2020 Sorrel Fund audit, or alternatively, if he wants to punt to someone else, maybe to Mr. Bate?
Yes, I'll be able to address that. When it came to my attention that the 2020 soil audit wasn't available, I did follow up with RSM and asked them, who was the county's internal auditors, to look into and research that issue and let me know what the status was. They had performed, I would say, at least part of that audit, and but they had not completed it. It did not come to the county manager's office or Natural Resources for the review process, which is part of our administrative order on internal audits, and it did not go forward to the audit committee or to the board. They have been, I was advised that they have been working on that because what they did is look at what they had done. They did an internal quality control and saw that they needed to do more on that, and they have been working that. I do believe I know that they are here now. If the board has any specific questions, we are scheduled. My understanding is, as part of the next audit committee meeting, which a variety of audits will be brought to the audit committee, that before that happens, in accordance with the internal audit administrative order, they will be presenting to me and appropriate staff the various draft audits that they have prepared, and they intend to include the soil 2020 as part of that. So we'll be reviewing it this coming, actually Thursday is the one on fire rescue, and Friday is a number of other ones, including the soil one. Subsequent to that, on April 20th is the next internal audit committee meeting, and it should be scheduled to be presented to them at that time. And once that's completed, it will be presented to the Board of County Commissioners and be made available online as the completed audits are for all the internal audits that are completed.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So if I understand correctly, Mr. Abate, you're saying we're anticipating it'll make it back to the committee level in roughly a month?
Yeah, it should be in front of the audit committee by April 20th, I believe, is the next scheduled date.
And at that point in time, is it technically a public document, or does it have to come back
Yeah,
to us
at that
before
time,
then?
it would be presented to the committee. It would be a final document to the committee. It would be a public document that would be shared with the committee members there, and then it's brought forward to the board after it goes to the committee. But it would be public at that point because it would be their final audit report.
Okay, and I guess as long as you and RSM are on the same page as far as the timeline, I don't know that I need to make a motion today, but I just wanted to have some clarity because I've had a lot of folks reaching out to me specifically on this issue, and I just wanted to stick it on as an agenda item so there's some level of formality in getting this info out there.
Commissioner Pritchett?
I just want to say, because I think public trust has got a little bit damaged with all the conversations, but COVID hit during that time period, and from my understanding, you guys were still testing revenues, and it's real hard to go to a 2021 audit without knowing 2020 was okay. So I know you're going to be doing some more testing on procurements and those types of things. But you are the internal auditors. But we also have Cherry Becker, the external auditors that heavily audit this as well. So between the two of them, because it's such a large revenue source, the more concentration goes to this than other areas. So I don't have a lot of discomfort thinking something is off. You guys do your job and help with those other things. I know we always tell you to make sure you check over this because it's such a large amount of money. But I don't have the stress that I think a lot of people are starting to have with this. I don't have a lot of discomfort. So I know when you come back with this, hopefully you're checking internal controls, which we need to do, and make sure the funding's where it should be in contracts. But from what I've seen, the things I've looked at, I don't have a lot of discomfort. So I'm thinking that's what you're going to come back with a report of maybe internal controls to tweak or whatever y'all have done in the past. But I just want to say that for a matter of public trust, I don't have discomfort with the way we've been managing the lagoon funds.
Ms. Sullivan?
Sandra Sullivan, South Patrick Shores. In going over, first of all, I did records requests. I did records requests for all the audits, and in one of those, the 2020 audit was not there. So I started digging into the audit process and wanted to understand, and downloaded the contract form where, as I understand it, the county manager works with RSM and the audit committee to give direction. So I've done a records request for the directions that were provided to Sorrel. The contract also addresses risk assessment. And my background with large-scale accounting implementations, you would never have the person who is running checks in a company be the person who's signing checks, as an example, because that would be representative of a risk. And so looking at this, there have been concerns brought up recently about conflicts of or some suggestions of maybe there's some conflicts of interest and that to be looked into. I'd like to bring up, this was the 2020 audits that were done. So in terms of COVID affecting, certainly there were just as many audits done in 2020 by RSM as in previous years. So we have the Director of Natural Resources now only spending 10% of her time on natural resources, 90% of her time on Sorrel, and Sorrel now paying for that. And in records requests, I received 240 pages of communication between the director and RSM and involving this particular one was the time frame to do with the 2020 audit. In the Sorrel meeting on Friday, it was stated by the auditors that the director didn't show up at this meeting that she said she would be at. They're asking her for a presentation. The question I have is essentially when you have the person who is directing the direction of the Sorrel funds, and that person is been authorized to also pursue grants, and also when the selection committee selects, say, the top 7 companies, and the one that is ranked 4th and the most expensive gets consulting contract, you start to get some red flags sticking up of concern. When you look at previous audits, this is one from 2019 where conflicts of interest were found in the TDC, and so that was addressed. And so I did records requests for the financial disclosure forms for the Sorrel board. And apparently there are none. So it seems we have a number of issues. I also looked at P-card transactions. That was addressed by them, and there are transactions over $1,000. So I would appreciate some feedback on this audit.
All right. Commissioner Lober?
Yeah, based on the input that I've gotten from Mr. Abate and not seeing anyone from RSM flailing over there in disagreement in the back, my thought is I'm just not going to take action on this item today. I'll put this off until we actually get the audit back, or if we don't for some reason a month from now, then we can revisit this. And potentially if some of the concerns that were brought up are addressed, wonderful. If not, if they're appropriate to bring up at the time, then that's what we'll do.
Okay. Moving on to item J4.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you for this hot button Intergovernmental Radio Systems Advisory Committee, or the EARSAC, I guess is the So let me tell you the history of this one because it's really exciting. In 2007, the Intergovernmental Radio Systems Advisory Committee was created and organized to monitor the upgrade of the county's intergovernmental radio system from 4 towers to 9. At the time of its inception, this committee was deemed essential. However, the project, or the 9th tower, was completed in 2019. Yet, you guessed it, the committee lives on. The board hasn't met since 2019. I've discussed this with Public Safety Director Matt Wallace, as well as the Director of Brevard County Emergency Management, John Scott, and concur that the board is no longer necessary. Now, here's the wrinkle. The MOU in which this board was created requires the approval from 18 cities as well as the sheriff for termination.
What?
So I would like to make a motion, and by the way, when we speak with those cities and the sheriff, we won't do it at intersections, okay? We will do it in other places. So I would like to make a motion to authorize and direct staff to contact all necessary parties and request termination of the MOU. That would be my motion. I'd be glad to answer any questions, even though this one is pretty basic.
Commissioner Lober?
Okay, the first thing is on the 4th page of the PDF that's attached to the agenda item. It says this page was left blank, and it has a page number. It lied. Second thing, getting to it here, you like that one? Second thing,
That's detail-oriented if I ever saw it.
I appreciate that, a little obsessive-compulsive. As far as Mr. Scott and Colonel Wallace, do you have any concerns if this is disbanded at all, or are we going to basically continue business as usual without this being in place?
No concerns, sir, Commission, and good morning. We're able to handle this in a PSAP meeting that occurs regularly, so the dialogue and the forum will continue. We're simply just moving where that discussion takes place.
I appreciate that. I'll go ahead and second the motion then.
All right, Commissioner Pritchett?
I was going to make a motion to second, as long as Commissioner Tobias would agree to reading all of the intros to these from now on, because it was actually like story time, and I enjoyed it.
Commissioner Tobias?
Well, you're going to be excited about this because next meeting, I will be bringing up for consideration the termination of the Emergency Medical Service Review Committee and the Emergency Medical Service Advisory Council. They are not one in the same. I have trouble telling my students, hey, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are different documents. I got that confused here. I thought these were the same advisory bodies, so I want you on the edge of your seat for the next meeting because I'm going after these. Watch out. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, item J5. Commissioner Tobias.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank the board because it was with your help that we tasked staff to come up with a document that I think you've all looked at this time that's dealing with county employee fee discounts. So I took that document and I turned it into policy. Believe it or not, it was quite a bit easier because of what was already put in place. It should be noted that already we have something called recreation partners. These recreation partners already receive a 50% discount. Recreation partners are defined as, quote, any sanctioned group organization that has a current recreation partner agreement with the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners. So the guidelines of this fee discount would be as follows. Number one, match the employee discount with that of recreation partners. So we're just slipping them in there for the 50% discount. We would include a provision limiting the amount of annual benefits to $500 per employee. This does not apply to any ancillary costs. These are staff time by hour, transportation, or any deposits. As stated, previously stated, sorry guys, this does not include either A, fines, or B, a discount for any of the 5 of us. So commissioners are exempt and have to pay full. And requires that a fiscal impact be tracked and this matter be brought back to the board for a comprehensive review after 1 year. So the report from staff indicates that a change to Resolution 16152, specifically Exhibit A, quote, Parks and Recreation Department fee schedule would need to take place in conjunction with the board policy. Therefore, it is proposed that the board also approve the amendment to Resolution 16-152 to properly effectuate this course of action. So, in other words, I have to have 2 motions, and I'll get them out of the way, but then answer any questions. The first motion would be to approve the board policy regarding employee fee discount. And the second one is approve the proposed amendments to Resolution 16-152, adding county employees to Category 2 of the fee schedule as discussed.
Commissioner Lober?
I like the thought. I'm not going to vote for it, though. I'll tell you, my issue is not with the item itself. It's with the fact that we've had a number of increases that we've had to absorb internally, and a lot of them have had to be passed along to our constituents. And it's just hard for me to raise anything for a constituent while we're turning around and lowering costs for folks that work here. I think if we didn't have some of the items that we've had in the recent past, I'd probably support this, but I just can't based on some of the items we've had come up in the recent past with costs going up.
Comment?
Yeah, I'll just weigh in.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Lober, I share your thoughts. I think that they're valid points, but I think that we're talking about such nominal numbers here. I think it's a goodwill gesture more than anything, so I'll be in favor of it.
All right. And I like the idea. I think, we have a hard enough time retaining employees because we do pay them on the lower side. And I don't want to say that to diminish what they do, because they do great work here. I'm saying it's a small benefit, and if we can provide it to our employees, I'm for it. Commissioner Pritchett?
I want to just throw out this. Commissioner Tobias, you talked about working towards maybe doing a 5% increase. Are you still working on that, sir?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes, I think it's 5.38 to match the state increase, but again, I will have some sort of plan to get us there as to how we get those dollars. I don't think it would be fair for me just to throw that out. Again, that would be the delta between the proposed 3 and 5.38. It's a little bit more complicated. We'll get into a little bit later because there are certain folks that we need to get to $15 an hour. So those folks need to be taken out because the dollar in effect is larger than the 5.38. So the delta really isn't as large as what you would think it would be, but I'll have that coming up here in the near future.
Okay, so I would probably work more towards supporting that than this. I know this is like one of those items that kind of sound good, but if all of these are user fees, so it will directly affect the rest of the public. They're going to have to pay more. So I would work more towards getting the staff rate up with the cost of living that's about to happen. It's going on everywhere, and it's pretty outstanding. So I won't be supporting this, but Commissioner Tobias, I will be looking forward to what you come with as far as getting us into competitive pay statewide.
All right. Did you make a motion, Commissioner Tobias?
Yes, Madam Chair. And I think I need
First
to
item.
make these separately. separately. So the first motion was to approve the board policy regarding employee fee discounts.
I'll second
All
that.
right. I have a motion and a second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 3-2.
And Madam Chair, the second one is approve the proposed amendments to Resolution 16152, adding county employees to Category 2 of the fee schedule.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 3-2. All right. Moving on to item J6, Commissioner Pritchett. Oh, Commissioner Tobias, I'm sorry. I don't know why I thought it was you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is about tangible personal property, and to be clear, this is only covering county commission offices. I'm just trying to take a closer look at tracking of tangible personal property owned by the county in the custody of the county commission offices. I think Commissioner Pritchett had begun the discussion and had done a lot of work, and I was kind of getting a little jealous, so I wanted to get caught up with her, and I thought this would be something to get me there. My office, with the input of Central Services and the County Attorney's Office, drafted a board policy that applies to, again, only county commission offices. The board policy objective is to lower capitalization thresholds for tangible personal property, which is defined as, quote, furniture, equipment, fixtures, and other tangible personal property of a non-consumable nature and a normal expected life of 1 year or more. The categories in this board policy are computers, furniture and equipment, and other fixed assets, all defined within. To be clear, this does not include membership fees, continuing education, software, and approved contracts. The board may want to look at that in the future. However, I just didn't have the wherewithal to put it in this policy. I tried, it just was a little bit difficult for me. This policy requires tagging by county asset management if the tangible personal property is over the capitalization threshold of $100 in each category. The implementation of this policy should not be cumbersome. For example, since 2016, the District 3 office has had 2 such items: a purchase in March 2017 for $109.99, and another one in November 2021 for $416.23, both which currently are exempt from the county policy, but under this one would then need a tagging. Again, this would be in the future, of course, one would be more than willing to do in past. But just, again, let me say this because this only applies to the county commission offices. This would be extremely burdensome if we were to do it county-wide. So that is the crux of it. And the motion would be to approve the proposed board policy regarding tangible personal property for county commission offices. I'd be more than willing to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Commissioner Lober?
A few things. First, you mentioned it would only apply to items over 100, and I don't know how many we're going to come across over any short period of time, but your motion in the written portion includes 100, and I think either way, just there should be clarity as to what the motion is, because what you said doesn't match what's written. The other thing is looking at AO 41 with computer equipment, or pardon me, computers over 750 and essentially other stuff over 1,000 with the life expectancy that you mentioned. I don't care what the number is set at. I think it should be uniform across the entire organization. So whether it's 100, 300, 750, 1,000, $20, whatever it is, that's my preference, to have whatever is in place match the AO or vice versa. I also would be curious as to what Central Services thinks would be required of them and how burdensome tagging things would be, whether this is a 5-minute thing for them or whether it's a 12-hour thing for them. Because we've, even without the tagging requirements, we've tagged, I believe, everything that's been at or above the thresholds to tag, and they come in, they've got a couple things to scan here and there, and they're in and they're out, and frankly, it doesn't take them much time, and it doesn't take us much time, but I just don't know how much more this would create in terms of a burden on them. But like I said, the specific number is largely irrelevant to me. I just think it ought to be uniform.
Mr. Abate?
Let me address a couple of items. First, on the AO, I will tell you that staff is currently working on revisions to that AO to address issues related to a category that, as we looked at what the state does and other jurisdictions, that they call it attractive items. We've defined in the draft of the revision that we're working on, Central Services and the County Manager's Office, what those items would include. And so that would be independent of what are currently established as the thresholds of $1,000 or $750. It was computer equipment. So we will be putting that into place at some time once we get that draft finalized. But staff's been working on it, and myself and Central Services in the last couple of weeks. There is, as Commissioner Lober, as you've mentioned, there is going to be the issue of what additional work after the tagging occurs. So you've got the tagging as one issue. A second issue will be who is conducting the inventories that occur, and how often will those inventories occur by either asset management staff, which is who currently performs those inventories annually, both for anything that qualifies under the current capital assets, under the current board policy and administrative order for both the Board of County Commissioners as well as the charter offices, and then any revisions that happen through this particular policy, if it's adopted by the board, or the administrative order, which is going to expand what it is that is tagged and then inventoried, including that in some areas we may have the departments do the inventories and certify that, but that's something we're working on internally right now to look what the best way to handle that will be.
Mr. DePaia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Commissioner Lober was absolutely correct. I misstated or overlooked the items that would happen to be exactly $100. And the policy is not congruent with what I said. I said over $100. What I should have said was $100 or more. So thank you. If any of you got an item that was exactly $100 and no cents, and this does pass, that was caught. The other issue was the county-wide policy and the county-wide formality of being on a level playing field. I see that a little bit differently, and the reason I see that differently is in the policy, because right now, as Mr. Abate mentioned, that's administrative order. I see that as a management function, and I'm going to support him in whatever direction that he goes with that, as that his function under the charter. However, policy is something that governs us as commissioners, so that's why this is not an administrative order. It is a policy. So I see a difference between those two, but I understand how you may see how you may see similarities.
Commissioner Lober?
Just a question for Mr. Abate. When do you think you'll have the revisions ready? Because frankly, if they're a good fit for the entire organization, I might even put a motion out to basically copy and paste it, make it a commission policy, and literally whatever you all change, just to incorporate whatever that is verbatim identical.
I will tell you that I have reviewed and came up with that, the language that I've described here. There's a number of other changes that Kathy's been working on, because it's a rather comprehensive policy. And so we've gone through at least a couple of versions on it. I didn't have a target date of when it would be done, but we're trying to do it as quickly as possible. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, we're supposed to have the revisions finished by Thursday, so I'm supposed to look at those by Thursday.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I guess at this point, I just want to wait to see what you all come up with, so.
Yeah, we've been
I'm kind of
working,
an
I
holding
believe,
pattern.
we've been speaking to asset management so we can address the issue of how the inventory will be done. We haven't really broached it with directors yet, and I'd like to make sure because if we add additional burdens to obviously the department, I want to make sure that they all understand that, and if there's any unintended consequences, we take care of it before we put the administrative order in place.
Thanks.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, I'm good with this. I went back and thought through the things that we've done. We might have one or two as well. So I don't think it's an extra load other than the computers, which we do through IT, and they always come out and check that as well. And it's kind of nice to see them once a year. As far as the AO, Mr. Abate, that'd be up to you. Miss Abby kind of just mentioned, I'm sorry, Miss Jordan mentioned a moment ago, like a lot of these items up here are over 100, so they'd have to come in and tag and do all these, and no one's going to want to walk off with a timer. So the attractive word I thought was very ingenious that you guys are working on that, because some things are more attractive to disappear than others. So can't wait to see what you come back with. That's very interesting. But Commissioner Tobias, you have my support on this, sir, and I wish I would have gotten to it first.
All right. And I'm going to go ahead and support it. I think we have 3 items that are already through asset management already. But obviously, we'll take a look and see what else we have as well. But I like this. I think everybody needs to be accountable for what we've purchased for our offices. So I'll support it. Did you make a motion, Commissioner Tobias?
Yes, Madam Chair, but I'll make it again. To approve the proposed board policy regarding, quote, tangible personal property for county commission offices, Madam Chair. Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Tobias, second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1. All right, moving on to public comment. Ms. Sullivan?
Sandra Sullivan. So I'd like to address, thank you, Commissioner Pritchett, for bringing up the perception of a decline in trust of the soil tax and why we got here and why we started doing records requests. So last year, there was a MRC report card that came out, and in that report card, they talked about that in 2009, the seagrass looked as good as it did in 1943 aerials. In 2010, it started declining. Correlation, not causation. They mentioned that the state had switched from mechanical harvesting of aquatic weeds to broadcast spraying of herbicides. So what has happened since then? So between this meeting and the last BOCC meeting, we had the MRC report card for this year. And what they found is 96% of seagrass in the lagoon is now dead. And the issue with that is life in the lagoon is connected to that. So seeing the manatees, the UME is just what you see visually, but that relates to declining fish populations and shrimps and other, the diversity. It's the most diverse lagoon, and that's what we're seeing. So this is MRC's map of the change, and what they're seeing is you have improving water quality, but seagrass is still declining. So what they said last year and this year is something other than nutrient loading is resulting in the decline of the lagoon. So Dr. DeFries wrote a letter to Courtney Barker's on the COC board, and to Virginia Barker back in April of last year. Said, we don't have data for herbicides. Said, the science is keeping him up at night. That, and I'm just going to put it in my own words, that it's resulting in declining seagrass. The science is indicating it's feeding algae blooms, and it's highest in the manatees here in Brevard. In fact, the lagoon report found F minus grade for Brevard. Brevard has the worst water quality, but we have a tax here. What are some of the other counties doing? Martin County and Indian River County have bans on herbicides. They do not spray it, they're contractors. But Brevard County increased it by 2.5-fold. So I put 2 other folders and I'm nearly out of time, but this issue of conflicts of interest is something that really needs to be dived into, because while we're spending $3.8 million on 2 projects consulting with FIT on dredging, we have COC members who are voting on dredging matters and not recusing themselves, and now it appears that there isn't those forms. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Marie Peel?
So, good morning again. Marie Peel, Vice Chairwoman of the Libertarian Party of Brevard County. I am requesting updated information that may have been indirectly discussed this morning by County Manager Abate. On April 20th, 2021, a fire assessment was passed as item H3. This motion was amended to add a Brevard County Fire Rescue audit to the start of the next RSM audit cycle. Upon reviewing brevardfl.gov, I found the RSM audit plan for fiscal year 2020 to 2021 that was posted in November of 2020, but I have not found a similar plan listed for fiscal year 2021 to 2022. So I'm seeking confirmation on whether or not it has been indeed implemented as was passed in that motion of April 20th, 2021. I had previously sought an update by email on this issue. I didn't get a response. Possibly it was lost in the shuffle. So I felt a face-to-face request for an update might be more effective. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the cards I have. And we'll move on to board reports. Mr. Abate?
I have no additional report.
Ms. Jornby?
Briefly, just the legislative session has ended, so we are evaluating a couple bills, one particular regarding publishing legal notices on publicly accessible websites, as well as the Local Business Protection Act, which would provide recovery of loss of business damages if there was a county ordinance that impacted a business. So we are in the process of evaluating them. If there are any changes, we'll bring them to the board later.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Pritchett?
Yes, I want to ask Ms. Jordan-B if I need to advertise so that Commissioner Tobias and Lober can attend church on Sunday.
No need to, as long as there's no public comment or public discussion about business.
That's so cute. Commissioner Lober?
Wrong button. I wasn't going to comment, but I do want to add one thing based on what Abby just mentioned as far as the item where we could be on the hook for business damages based on that one bill that's floating through. I think people may miss at first blush how serious that really is in terms of its potential impact to this county and the potential negative impact that it may have to the county. In particular, if you think about all the efforts that have been undertaken over the past X number of years to get folks off of septic tanks and get them on sewers, the bottom line is you could have septic tank companies suing you because you've reduced their revenue such that they no longer are able to make 85% of what they were previously making prior to any ordinance that would mandate folks to connect to sewer. So I think it's something that, it may sound a little more innocuous than it is, but it has the potential to hurt a lot of folks in this county and to derail the plans that we have to try to fix up the water quality in the lagoon.
Thank you. Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple things. I wanted to see where other folks up here were on this, but I'd like to request that the county attorney's office, in conjunction with the county manager's office, to come together to add and to clarify language for cumulative public record requests. I think that would make things a lot clearer, not only for the folks that are requesting information, but also those that are receiving it. So that is something. And second, there's a dirty rumor about staff, so I think we need to come out and just talk about it. It's Jim's birthday, and he is the coolest adult Boy Scout out there. So cool. He has a wonderful Saturn. And here's a guy that's showing up. I mean, most people would take off on their birthday, and here's a guy that is trying to blend in by. So thank you so much for all you do for us, and wish you a happy birthday.
But you're not going to sing to him?
No, he's been punished enough.
God forbid.
So you punish us all. Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of things. I hope I don't bore you guys. Seagrass is a big issue, and as your representative on the Indian River Lagoon Council, I'd like to address that from my perspective, nobody else's perspective at all. But I think the elephant in the room for seagrass is the sea cow, which is called the manatee. Nobody is addressing the fact that we have too many manatees eating such a small amount of seagrass. When FWC, both nationally and in the state protected the bears. They came up with a study. How much habitat is needed to keep the bears healthy? And when the bear population exceeds that, what happens? They have a hunt. They cull the herd. They decrease the population. Same thing with deers. You know and I know that would be very difficult with manatees because everybody loves the manatees. If you killed a manatee, my God, the world would come to an end. But I think something has to be considered along those lines. What I think we're seeing is accumulation of a lot of different effects, but I think that manatees, unlike a cow, for example, a cow eats grass, but a cow munches the grass and leaves the root. So when the cow walks away, the grass has a chance to grow again. Seagrass, that doesn't happen. They pull the grass out by the roots. And so if you have a population of 1,000 manatees and the environment will only support 500, it makes sense that they're going to eat themselves out of house and home. So I just wanted to bring that up. That's my perspective, and I think that this has been discussed, but not publicly. I think both state and federal FWC, as I understand it, are concerned with this, but they don't want to mention it in public. And for good reason, because again, nobody wants to see the poor little manatees go away because they're sweet and we all love them. But the reality is what the reality is. So moving on to CFX, I'm also your board representative for CFX, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of things from our last meeting. We are moving to eliminate toll takers because for safety reasons, one, we save a lot of money without toll takers. It's happening anyway. I think that, and I will come to that, but a cashless toll system saves CFX a lot of money, and one of the ironic things is that when we go cashless, we don't need Brinks trucks, and that would save us about $1 million a year because change is heavy. So we need Brinks trucks, and if we go cashless, then we don't need them. But in reality, about 80% of our tolls are cashless already. Only about 20% of the people actually pay cash. And a good percentage of that is toll by plate, which is interesting because toll by plate costs more money to the individual. I think it's like $2 or $2.50 added to their toll. But amazingly enough, we've done surveys of these people that continually pay by plate. And they do so not because they can't pay with a credit card each month. They don't want to. They consider that an invasion of their privacy. So it's an interesting dynamic that I just thought you guys might find interesting too. The other problem we have with toll taking is that many of the coin machines that we have are extinct. They don't make parts for them anymore. So that's another thing driving us to toll us. And I've mentioned it before, our UniPass that CFX has works in 18 different states up and down the East Coast and a few west of the East Coast. And that is the industry trend. We're working toward a nationwide toll system. So if that happens, that'll be interesting, but it's not in the near future. And going back to, I have it here somewhere, the IRL. Just a couple of notes from the last meeting. The IRL will receive $909,800 annually for the next 5 years from the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And we've also gotten an increase for 2023 of additional funding of $50,000 from the federal appropriations from EPA. And we're currently administering 37 different projects. So, and the last thing is that I am sponsoring a trip on Brightline for some of our staff and movers and shakers of the county. I don't know how many people have heard of this. I would love to have invited my fellow commissioners on this, but because of sunshine, I was advised that that was not a good idea. But I am bringing representatives from the sheriff's office, representatives from firefighters, all four of the Chamber of Commerce's and other organizations. and there's about 45 people that are going to be on the bus. The bus is being donated. The trip on Brightline is being donated. We're going to be taking a bus down to West Palm Beach. The Brightline will take us on their high-speed rail down to Miami. We will be greeted there by the executives from Brightline, and they will be discussing what's going on in the company and anticipated operations here in Brevard County. But it is moving forward within the next 12 months that we will see that train zipping by in Brevard County. And I've worked with Abby very closely on this, so staff is going to pay their own way for the Brightline and for the bus, including myself and my wife, we will be paying. And the other people have been comped by a bus company and Brightline. So that's
Cool.
it. That's it for my report.
Thanks for the invite. I'm just kidding.
I
Speaking
would
of,
love to have had you guys. You would love it. You would just absolutely love it.
speaking of Brightline, and I don't know Commissioner's comfort level with this because I just got it, so I couldn't add it to the agenda, so thought I'd bring it to the meeting. The Florida Department of Transportation and Brightline are applying for a grant through the Raise Discretionary Grant, and they're looking for a rail safety project that will involve all counties and will help, with dynamic envelope striping, which will help at our intersections, and additional signage. So it's going to be above and beyond what they're already agreed to install, and they're applying for a grant, and they just wanted a letter of support from the board. And again, I understand, because this is kind of brought on us at the last minute, it doesn't cost us anything, obviously, and anything to improve those intersections, which I know people are concerned about. I wanted to at least present it to the board to see if you're willing, as far as board support for the letter, and if not, I'm happy to sign it as a singular commissioner.
I would like to make a motion to produce that letter and have you sign it, because, as you said, this isn't going to cost our taxpayers anything.
And you don't have to be a fan of Brightline, but, at
Well,
the
you
same
have to be a
time, if
fan of
it's,
safety, and we're all concerned about our constituents. And when you're talking about 32 trains a day, this is real, folks. This is going to impact our county.
and the TPO's approved it, it's going, Palm Bay's approved it, and it's on Cocoa, Melbourne's, and Rockledge's agenda. And I was going to ask them to be here, but I didn't know how long this meeting was going to be, and I didn't know if commission would have questions. And like I said, I have no issue going ahead and signing it myself if commissioners don't feel comfortable, because they haven't had a lot of time to digest it.
Second, Commissioner Smith.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Smith and a second by Commissioner Pritchett. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thanks, guys. And I just want to say kudos to Tom Neidert and our BCFR group. We've raised $25,000 of the 110 that St. Baldrick's raised. They had the event this past weekend, and I really wish I could have been there, because I would have loved to have shaved Tom's head myself. But he puts his heart and soul into that. I know many of our members work really hard to raise money, and I'm really proud of them every year, and proud that they're part of Brevard County. So
Amen.
kudos, Tom, and the crew, and thank you for all that you do.
Can I say one thing, too?
You sure can.
You've already given him a lot of credit, but you can't give this guy enough credit. He's worked so hard and raised so much money. I had my head shaved 5 or 6 years ago for this project, and this guy has a heart as big as this room. So
You're getting emotional talking about him, aren't you? It's easy to, because I can feel my own eyes well up. If you only knew the things this guy does outside, and we're talking about Tom Neidert, so sorry, Tom, to embarrass you, but if the things he does outside of this county, outside of his role in Brevard County, just to help other people, even out of country, and I just think he's pretty awesome, and I'm glad to call him my friend. All right, sorry, Tom. All right, any further business? No? All right, call this meeting adjourned.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.